Welcome in to the Yinziders podcast, the bi-week edition.
From London. Live from London.
I'm Jenna Harner from WPXI. He's the Athletics' Mike DeFabo. Mike, I think I'm still kind of searching for words for how phenomenal this first ever game in Dublin, Ireland was. The atmosphere, the energy. And granted, it was because there was about 10,000 more fans than we're used to for covering games, but it was one of the coolest atmospheres I've ever been a part of, covering a professional game in any way. It was unlike really anything else.
Yeah, I think this was one of the coolest games that I've ever covered. Maybe the only game that rivals it is the exact opposite, when during COVID there were no fans in Madison Square Garden, and it was like the Penguins and the Rangers were playing a private game for me. Like Pablo Escobar, how he famously used to bring in the Colombian soccer team to play in front of him. This was like the complete opposite, where there were so many fans, 75,000, which is like, maybe 10,000 more than fit in Heinz Field or Acrisure Stadium.
Than we're used to.
So that alone meant that it was going to be a louder environment. Then you figure that people spent thousands of dollars to go to Dublin. And they were really excited and hyped. Probably had a couple Guinnesses, which also contributed to the enthusiasm.
Yep.
And then there were also people probably there for their first ever professional football game. So it was a very, very cool environment. I think maybe the coolest part for me was Renegade. Yeah. When that came on. It was so loud, so electric, and that environment alone, I think, they will definitely be back in Dublin.
And there were so many Steelers fans. I can't underscore this enough. The players said this. You could just sense it. It felt like a Steelers home game. Everywhere you looked, people were twirling their terrible towels. There were no parts of that stadium that didn't have at least 3/4 of whatever section it was filled with Steelers fans. You walked out onto the concourse. There were jerseys. It was just everyone was everywhere. And I know we talked about Renegade, but I think one of the cool moments too, and I didn't realize this was, you discovered this actually, that this was kind of a Croke Park and Ireland tradition, but the song Zombie, which I'm not going to sing because it sounds terrible, but if you're like, wait, what song is that? Look it up. It was one of the coolest moments where the whole crowd is singing and they turned off the music because the game's back on, and everybody just, wherever you looked, you just heard people singing. And Cam Hayward said that was one of the coolest things afterwards. And it's apparently, it happened, Irish fans chanted it after the World Cup, the Rugby World Cup.
I think it was the Rugby World Cup is what they said.
Yeah.
And it became like the theme song, and so they play it now every time there's, I believe, a rugby or Gaelic football match at Croke Park. So it was really, I think, a great success. And I'm kind of curious to see what happens from here, because the NFL has given international, what do they call it?
Marketing
rights. And it seemed like they arbitrarily, in some senses, in some teams, they're like, okay, LA Chargers, you're assigned to random place.
Was it Greece?
Greece.
Was the Chargers Greece? Yeah.
Greece. We were joking the other day that it must have been the funniest meeting of all time, where they were trying to pick. But there actually is a connection between the Rooneys and Ireland.
Yeah.
And I wonder, is this going to become a yearly thing? Is this going to be every other year, every couple years? Because I think that Roger Goodell at NFL owners meetings recently talked about how he wants every single fan of the NFL to have a home team. Mm. And the connection between Ireland and the Pittsburgh Steelers has to be one of the strongest of any international market.
For sure.
And so I wonder if this is going to be something that becomes a yearly thing.
And you could see just how much it meant earlier in the week when we spoke with owner Art Rooney II, Dan Rooney, just how much it meant to them to kind of carry out for Art, his father, for Dan, his grandfather, their his dream of having a game in Ireland and having kind of the Irish fans, Irish people get to experience Steelers football. And they got to experience a true Steelers game. It was the entirety. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's what we were joking about. This was a Steelers game because Steelers football is about great defense, running the football, and of course it's not a Steelers game unless it's an absolute nail-biter at the end.
And the defense has to make a stop.
As my Uncle Tom always likes to say, every game is a heart attack.
Yep.
And I remember sitting there, and at one point I turned to like Jerry Dulac and Jason Mackey when it was down to the wire and the Steelers needed one more stop, and I said, yep, now fans from Ireland know this is a true Steelers football game.
Yep. Our brother-in-law, your sister Julia, her husband Nick experienced his first Steelers game. He's from London. And my goodness, he got the full experience, which was phenomenal. But let's dive in a little bit and kind of just talk about, okay, they're at the bye week. This was, to me, it felt like the first game where we saw a lot of potential of what this team could be. And yes, it's week 4, so you kind of figured this team was getting their legs under them. They were kind of figuring things out through the first 3 weeks. But I think this game for me, you looked at the defense in particular through the first 3.5 quarters of this game, and you said, okay, this is what we expected from the defense that we haven't seen through the first 3 weeks of this season so far.
Yeah, let's start with the defense.
Yeah.
And like this defense came in with so much hype, so many expectations, and a lot of that were things that they said themselves.
Of course.
It wasn't the media hyping them. It was they were the ones doing the hyping.
Mike Tomlin, Juan Thornhill,
right.
A lot of these guys saying, this could be historic. We mean the team could be one of the best defenses ever from these guys. And there were lapses.
They hadn't shown it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I would say for 3 to 3.5 quarters, this looked like the defense we expected, or this was the closest to what we expected.
Yeah.
And some of the things that I saw, like Deshaun Elliott coming back, was so significant.
Massive for this team.
And in a lot of different ways. He intercepted the pass to start the game. Mm-hmm. He had the key pass breakup to end the game.
To seal it.
But beyond that, I think you saw his physical presence in the box alone, even if he wasn't making the tackle, that helped them improve their run defense.
Very much so.
And then they were also bringing a lot of different pressures and blitzes, and he was definitely a central piece of that. So I feel like he's just a good guy to wrap up like what this defense, how it took a step forward, because you saw more pressure, even though that's been kind of a calling card of this defense this year. You saw them changing up some of their looks schematically in the secondary, and then you saw them again forcing turnovers. So, like, I think that this team, Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin get a lot of heat because they run what some people call like a vanilla or a bland or a stale defense. And I think they really did want to modify and upgrade this defense coming into this year.
Yeah.
But because of so many of the changes in the secondary and so many of the injuries, haven't been able to show it. And I think you start to see some of what they want to become. And so, like, I think they're still going to be primarily a single high team that's going to run a lot of cover 3 as their main coverage, a lot of cover 1, single high man coverage. But you are starting to see some shifts in terms of the coverages. A little more quarters coverage.
Yeah.
You're seeing them play from a 2-high shell, but just because they're in a 2-high shell doesn't mean they're playing cover 2 or quarters. They're rotating the safeties or vice versa. So you're seeing that change. And then it is a more aggressive defense. They're near the top of the league in blitz.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to be part of their identity, because if they're going to be this team that, like, they've struggled at times to get off the field in the traditional way, then why not be a gambling unit all around? If you're going to count on turnovers, why not also gamble and also send a lot of heat and send a lot of pressure? So that's why I like the fact that we are seeing more of like a return of Blitzburg in a lot of ways.
And you mentioned gambling because when we were in the locker room after the game talking with Patrick Queen, you were kind of asking him about that perfectly timed blitz that almost felt like it wasn't necessarily supposed to be what was happening in that moment, but you asked him kind of about it, and you said, hey, was this part, like...
Yeah, because I was like, it didn't look natural. Like, it looked to me like they were communicating, and there was maybe some late communication.
Yeah.
And I still, because we're still overseas, they actually are blocking our ability to watch the film. So I don't know exactly what coverage they were in, but I don't know whether maybe he was responsible for the running back and man coverage and green dogged, and realized, oh shoot, the guy's actually flaring out on a route. Well, I'm just going to go anyway.
Yeah.
Or he just decided to vacate his zone and his zone coverage. Whatever it was, he gambled and it ended up paying off. And I think he played a good game. And that was the other thing that stuck out to me was there were a number of guys on defense that we've been critical of, right?
Of course.
Keanu Benton, right? People were saying, should Daniel Ekuwale get more playing time? And he has gotten a little bit more. Peyton Wilson, he had lost playing time to Cole Holcomb. And you saw those two guys in particular, I think, have some redeeming moments and moments of redemption.
My favorite stat about Peyton Wilson's chase down of Jordan Addison, his top speed that he reached on that play, chasing down Jordan Addison on the 81-yard catch and run, was faster than DK Metcalf on DK Metcalf's, however long that touchdown, that long 80-yard touchdown was. There were the explosive plays in this game on both sides, I think, was a great part of what made it so exciting for fans. But again, with Keanu Benton, he had a sack and a half, kind of, elevating his performance more. Peyton Wilson playing well. A really good game from Patrick Queen. And not that he needs the approval, but I thought TJ Watt, there's been a lot of talk of, Watt's been a little quiet.
Yeah, I mean, the bar for TJ Watt is you have to play like the defensive player of the year week in and week out. Like when you're paid so much and you eat up so much of a salary cap, expectations are tied to compensation. People are going to want you to impact the game, and he did it in this one. Now that said, this wasn't a perfect game.
No.
And there are people in the comments on The Athletic being like, hey, did you forget that Carson Wentz threw for 350 yards? Did you forget that Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson both went over 100 yards? So, and I think that you asked Deshaun Elliott a question. And I think that his answer was kind of summed it up. And I hope I get this right, but he said, I think this game showed how great we can be, but I think this game also showed that we need to be more consistent. Yeah. And then he went on to say, look, when we have people down, we need to put our foot on their neck.
Yeah.
And I completely agree. Yes, for 3 quarters we saw growth, but then we also saw there's the miscommunication where Jordan Addison is just running free right down the right sideline. And it nearly went from this feel-good, awesome, hey, the Steelers came to Ireland and the Rooney family had this great moment and the Steelers can go home laughing about drinking Guinnesses, to, oh shit, this was a horrendous collapse. Yeah. This is embarrassing. The Steelers are going to the bye week and Steelers fans are freaking out about the team. They were 2 or 3 plays away from that happening.
And it's also worth noting that they did this against a backup quarterback, a makeshift Minnesota Vikings offensive line with how many people they came into the game.
They came in missing a guard, and then they lost their center and tackle in the process. So, but that said, you play who's in front of you.
Of course.
So, but, it's going to get more difficult. Mm-hmm. Maybe, but they still have to play the next couple games are against the Browns and against
the Bengals,
backup quarterback Bengals. Yeah. So it will get more difficult, and ultimately this team, as we continue to say, and I will continue to say, is going to be judged by how they perform in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. You're seeing small signs of growth.
You definitely are. And I think that there can be a lot of good taken away from this. I think, obviously, we looked at the early bye, too, as one of those things where, it's week 5. Is that going to be too early? I don't know if that is now based on the injury status of some of these guys. You're going to be without Jalen Ramsey for a little bit. It appears Calvin Austin's going to be gone for a little bit. You're still waiting on Joey Porter Jr. to come back, and it seems like he's making a little bit of progress. Jalen Warren, who, popped up on the injury report late this past week. So, you always take the bye when you can get it because of how beneficial in terms of just getting those guys who are injured back. But the Steelers are going to need this longevity here because you now go into the longest stretch of the season having this early bye. But I do think the way that they won and a lot of what they did in this game can be a really good springboard.
What about the offense? Can we talk about the offense?
I was going to say, we talked about defense. Let's look at the offense here, because this is an offense that is, who I think, is going to be who they are. This isn't going to be Aaron Rodgers chucking the ball 40 yards downfield to guys. It's going to be a lot of those dink and dunk passes, those getting the ball out quick. But you saw what happened on the touchdown to DK Metcalf. This team, you have the stat. What's the stat? Their EPA versus yards after catch.
They've got a young offensive line, and it's going to be a work in progress throughout the year. You've also got a 41-year-old quarterback who has lost some of his mobility. And so The way to work around that is get the ball out of the quarterback's hands before the pass rush can get to him.
Yep.
That's exactly what we're seeing. Mm-hmm. So right now, Aaron Rodgers is getting the ball out of his hands in about 2.5 seconds, fastest in the NFL. They also have the fewest air yards per attempt, which at 4.7. Okay, and it actually went down following that last game. They went in averaging 5 air yards per attempt. Now it's down to 4.7 after that last game.
Yeah.
But they lead the league in yards after the catch. And so that's like a lot of teams have seen a veteran quarterback try to work around his limited mobility by getting the ball out of his hands quickly with varying degrees of success. It's worked at times for guys like Drew Brees with the Saints at the end of his career. With Ben Roethlisberger, I'd say it was like an up and down thing. It worked at the beginning when they started out 11-0 or whatever it was.
Yeah, that was 2020.
But then when teams realized, hey, look, they're not going to be attacking downfield, then they start bringing their safeties down. Then they start playing tighter man coverage, and then the whole thing kind of falls apart. So for me, having a guy like DK Metcalf who can create after the catch is so important because if you're good, it's so much to ask Aaron Rodgers to coordinate. 15-play drive where he's perfect and every single pass is 5 yards. But if you can get it to DK and he adds 60 yards after the catch, that covers up a lot of execution.
And you and I have talked about this a little bit because it's been so interesting through these first couple games coming into this game in Dublin. A lot of people were saying, DK, where's DK? Where's his usage? The Steelers aren't utilizing him. I haven't felt that way. That's been something that's a weird narrative to me. And, I think this clearly was DK Metcalf's biggest and best game that we've seen from him so far. And I loved how he said, too, he was asked in the locker room, he said, this definitely felt like, okay, I'm here now. I'm home. But to me, they've been getting him involved. It's kind of just been what has been presented over the first 3 weeks. You go back to the New England game, the first half, the Steelers had 3 offensive possessions, and I believe one of those involved a 3-and-out. So you're not going to be
another one ended with a DK Metcalf cut touchdown.
Yeah.
I think that all year long, if you want to, every week there's probably on talk radio going to be, why is Pat Freiermuth not more involved?
Currently this week.
That's going to be the conversation this week.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be, why is DK Metcalf not more involved? Or it's going to be,
where's Jonnu Smith?
There was a couple weeks ago, it was, why is Jaylen Warren not more involved? I think that this offense has a lot of mouths to feed, and it's not going to be high octane enough to satisfy all of them.
No.
And I think that you just have to kind of accept that fact. And I think for me, DK is their best weapon offensively.
By a mile.
He needs to be featured in a variety of ways, and I have seen them do that.
Yeah.
Even the Patriots game, people are asking questions about why aren't they getting DK more involved. Well, they were running screens to him just to get the ball into his hands.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the best thing that they can do just because of who he is and what he can do with the football in his hands.
Their run game also took a massive stride forward, and I think we saw how much that opened everything up, and we saw how much I think that gave this young offensive line some more confidence. They were getting so much push up front. Kenneth Gainwell was 1 yard shy of a 100-yard performance, and we didn't expect him to be that feature back coming into this game. You thought it was going to be Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren, was inactive with that injury. But to me, there was so many benefits from what we saw with Kenneth Gainwell that, again, you talk about things that this team can build on. This run game, we're going to need to see so much more of it, but I liked what we saw in this small sample size of, okay, this team can run the football. Can they sustain it is going to be my question.
Yeah, and you saw them do some things schematically different. I think everyone by now, by the time you're listening to this, has seen bringing Spencer Anderson onto the field as an extra offensive lineman, using him next to Broderick Jones and Darnell Washington. Those are 3 big guys, and there's a lot of benefits to that. It creates an extra gap that the defense has to defend, or extra gaps in some cases. I just think that I think was part of the reason why the running game got going, even more so than Kenneth Gainwell. I think everyone's going to focus on, Kenneth Gainwell versus Jaylen Warren. I would look at it more as plus Spencer Anderson
Yeah.
equals more production.
Yeah, and it looked good. Again, small sample size. There's a lot more room for growth here, but I think again, these are all things you wanted to see with this team going into the bye. Like, hey, this feels like they're moving in the right direction, in the direction that we want to see. What concerns you? What are you kind of looking at that you're like, I am still a little like I don't feel easy about this for this team to kind of be the team that they can be this season?
Well, I think my biggest concern is I have seen this before with
Yeah.
Ben Roethlisberger. I've seen a team that starts pretty well with a veteran quarterback, and they're relying on this quick passing game, and it's working because the quarterback is so experienced. He can read the defense. He, knows where his guys are. But over time, opponents adapt to that. And that's why I think that like running the ball needs to be the thing that develops most. Like this offensive line we said going in was going to be such an important key for this team. It's going to continue to need to be because like Aaron Rodgers had a great quote after the game. He was like, "You guys keep asking me about why is there not more downfield passing? Why have we not gotten the ball to DK Metcalf more?"
Yeah.
And he was like, my answer keeps being, well, we need to run the ball better because they're in all these too high shells. And I think that that's the answer to a lot of it is like if they have the balance offensively, if they can actually be a Steelers team that runs the football and you don't put all this on Aaron Rodgers' shoulder, then maybe you can sustain it. But if this run game is inconsistent, if you're turning the Steelers one-dimensional and that one dimension is only getting the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands and it's, a 3-yard pass or a screen pass, I don't know that is sustainable offensively.
Yeah, and that to me is the thing that I worry about the most too. Is just like, we saw last year with the ways that the teams figured out, okay, this is what Russell Wilson has for this offense. This is all that he has. So you go back to the Hard Knocks clip with the Ravens scouting guy that they hired to kind of just basically look at other teams, look at opponents, and say what the Steelers had and what they didn't, and that does concern me. And obviously injuries, because I feel like we always say this every year, but I feel like there have been so many notable injuries up to this point that, again, one thing can change and, things can change pretty quickly depending on that. So health obviously is a big thing. Do you want to dive into quick picks? And just give our fun little, hey, we're in London. We will be able to see these games. It was really funny. We didn't really get to see a lot of football. Other than being at the Steelers game in Dublin. So
we didn't watch like 8 games this week.
No, we didn't. We had no. So this is a little bit of like, okay, intrigue. I'm going to pull them up right now. This is really
I'll
good.
pull it up.
Oh, okay. You'll pull them up on your phone. Here we go.
This is a professional.
This is the highest quality here. But things are wonky. Things are wonky, but this is what you expect early in the season.
Before we get into picks, do you want to talk about the state of the AFC North, or do you want to just do picks?
State of the AFC North. I mean, my goodness. I think everybody in Pittsburgh, I just see all over Twitter, everyone's immediately jumping to, hey, the Steelers are hosting a playoff game this year. Pump the brakes, people. Definitely have optimism. Not a bad thing, but we're going into week 5 here. It's a long, long season, but I do think, I don't.
Well, they've got a head start, but
yeah.
What they were in position to host a playoff game week 10 last year. Right now we're in week 4. I guess it's just for me. It's like, what are the Ravens going to figure it out? Because they went through some of these things last year. I'm wondering if the Ravens are going to be like the Bengals of last year.
It's a good take.
Because the Bengals of last year, remember early on, it was like, oh, they played a couple legitimate competitors within a point or 2 points.
They lost
and they
to the
lost.
Bills a couple,
and they were like
they
those
were close.
statement losses that you were like, oh, wow, like just because they were close, that means that they should be in contention.
Yeah.
And then they weren't.
Yeah.
They never were able to make up the ground that they lost. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think that the Ravens yet have lost enough ground that they can't still qualify for the playoffs. But they're getting there, and my biggest concern for them would be like the injuries and how long they keep these guys out. Because I think that they still have enough talent on their roster to win the division and still fulfill all of their potential. If they're healthy. But like they've already lost a couple guys for the season.
Yeah.
I was like watching something with like one of the reporters from Baltimore was saying like they went in to the locker room
Yeah.
and there wasn't anybody to talk to. All of the captains were either injured or out of the locker room.
Yeah.
So and as far as like the Bengals are concerned, they're a mess.
Yeah,
Like,
Joe Burrow is that team.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow is the only, I mean, he's not, but Joe Burrow is the heart and soul of that team, and not having him plays a major, major factor. The stats of how, they're one of the first teams to not put up, I forget exactly what it was, but like X amount of yards through 2 games, like that offense is night and day, is putting it very, very lightly with what they're able to do. So I think the Bengals, unfortunately, until they get Joe Burrow back, if you get Joe Burrow back at all, are kind of dead in the water. And then I don't want to just be classic and cliche here, but the Browns are the Browns. That's just unfortunately what it is.
Which means though they're not going to contend for the AFC North. But they're going to play a role in who ultimately wins it. They always, at some point, play spoiler. Yep. And I'm even nervous about the Thursday night game
in Cincinnati.
In a similar way, where it's like you expect them to win. But yeah, so I think at some point, like sweeping the Browns is going to be such a key part if the Steelers actually are going to take this early head start and turn it into an AFC North title.
And that's who we can dive into picks one sec, but that's who they see out of the bye. The Browns are coming off that game in London against the Vikings. So that'll just be an interesting dynamic to watch. We can obviously talk about that more next week. Let's dive into picks. It's also hilarious because, again, being 6 hours ahead, 5 hours ahead, whatever, 5 hours ahead, the Thursday night game between the Niners and the Rams is actually 1:15 a.m. on Friday morning here.
You might have to wake up for that one.
Might have to get ready for that. I'm going Rams in this one.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that the 49ers might be a bit overrated right now, or like, I don't know about overrated, but
injuries. They're dealing with injuries.
Yeah, like I think we all expected them to like return to be an ultimate contender.
Yeah, or just at
once
least
they
be able
got
to
some
compete.
after last year's down year and injury plagued season. I don't know if they're ever going to end up getting there. I think the Rams are going to be in a fight for the NFC until the very end.
I completely agree.
Vikings versus the Cleveland Browns.
In London. Right here in London. We've seen some Cleveland Browns jerseys. I'm going the Vikings just because I actually think their defense is decent. Carson Wentz did not look good, but the Browns just...
I think the question is like, how much do the Browns get after Carson Wentz?
Yeah. I think they can too.
Yeah, and they have the makeup to do it. Mm-hmm. I think I would go with the Vikings too.
Yeah, the Texans at the Ravens. I'm gonna have to watch injuries in this.
These are like 2 teams that we expected to be in the playoffs, and both of them are dealing with injuries and struggling early on.
I'm watching Lamar's status because obviously we're recording this a little bit earlier in the week, but I'm going Baltimore, but this game's going to be a lot closer than I think you'd expect if it was.
I think I would go with Baltimore because they're at home.
Yeah.
I think if Baltimore loses this one, this is when people start really freaking out.
Yeah. Dolphins at the Panthers. Oh,
the butt bowl.
Like any of these.
Yeah, this is.
Dolphins?
I think I would go with the Dolphins too, just because I don't really know what's up with Carolina.
I know.
I think they still suck, but I don't know what's up with them.
The Raiders at the Colts. I'm going Indy.
Zeke's
Colts. They lost to the Rams, but I feel like...
Zeke is a genius. We're going to have to clip in the very first ever Zeke's picks, and he's not here. He's on vacation.
Zeke is on vacation with his grandparents right now.
The first ever Zeke's picks... We were going to pick against the Colts.
Yep.
And Zeke put his arm on your leg and said, no.
He was like, hold on a second. So Zeke was on the Colts bandwagon, I think, before anybody was. He
is driving
the Colts bandwagon. Okay, so we're both going to Indy for this. Giants at the Saints. The New York Football Giants, led by Jackson Dart, getting their first win, this past week. I think they get 2 in a row.
I think so too.
Cam Scatabo too. I saw a picture. There was like dirt all over the front of his jersey, and people are tweeting like, "You play on turf. Where is this dirt coming from?" But that's
he just wakes up dirty.
He does. I respect it.
Wearing a hard hat.
So the Giants getting that win. The Cowboys at the Jets. The Jets, I feel like the Jets shouldn't be 0-4. I feel like the Jets should have at least one win at this point. But
I mean, the Cowboys only have one win in a tie that George Pickens didn't know that you could tie.
I like the Cowboys because I think of what we've seen from their offensive output, but I feel like, I don't know, Justin Fields, I've seen some decent things from him. He's played decent, I feel like, from the little bits that we've seen. Again, this whole week, we missed a lot of NFL football, so we're kind of going to catch up here.
This one is tough. This one really is a coin flip. I'm not sure what I would go. I will go with. I actually think I'm going to go with Dallas over the Jets. I think the Jets
No,
go.
I'm picking Dallas too.
Oh, you
I
are?
agree.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The Broncos,
Denver at Philly.
I'm going Philly.
I'm also going to go with Philly, even though I like Denver. I think they're finally starting to show their potential.
A.J. Brown, trouble in paradise, though. I know.
Yeah, but they always do this.
This is
every
so,
year.
classic.
There's always the they have to create drama. They're 4-0.
Yeah, you have to. You're right.
So they have to find a way to freak out, and the only way to freak out is they're not getting the ball to A.J. Brown. They're going to freak out about it for a while. Then all of a sudden they're going to start throwing it to A.J. Brown.
And life will be good.
Yeah, I think Philadelphia is going to win.
Sorry for A.J. Brown fantasy owners. The Titans at the Cardinals. Oof. Arizona, because it's a home game.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Arizona in this one.
I don't love this. I don't love that one.
But I might change my mind.
Yeah. Bucks at the Seahawks. I'm going Seattle. I like Seattle.
Seattle just made a really good impression on me.
Yeah.
When we saw them live in person.
Yeah. I thought they have a lot to work with. I like the Bucks. I know there's some injuries to their offensive line.
I think that's going to be a really close game. I think that's going to be entertaining.
This one. The Lions at the Bengals. Survivor pool, I'm picking the Lions. Game of the week pick, or best pick of the week, I'm picking the Lions in this one.
Yeah, definitely Lions.
Yep, they beat up on the Browns last week. Commanders at the Chargers.
Chargers at Commanders.
No,
Commanders at Chargers.
I'm going with the Chargers. I think both of those teams lost last week. But I think the Chargers bounced back after losing to the Giants. But yeah, I like LA, but
I'll go with the Chargers too. We got two more. How about New England at Buffalo? I'm going with Buffalo.
Yeah, the Bills home game. Is that Sunday night, technically? Is it Monday morning, Sunday? It's so hard to tell which ones. That's the Sunday night game. Sunday night football.
And then Monday Night Football, Kansas City Chiefs at the surprising Jacksonville Jaguars.
Mm-hmm. I've picked the Jags right the last 2 weeks, but I'm picking Kansas City in this one. It was, I don't know, everybody always, that game last week between the Chiefs and the Ravens, everyone's like, oh, well, like, the Chiefs are gonna do what the Chiefs are gonna do. They're very, very talented. So I think Kansas City wins. I think it's a close game, though. I think it's a close one.
Yeah, I like the Chiefs as well.
Yeah. Well, we will see you from Pittsburgh next week. Thank you for joining us here in London.
And Zeke will be back, we promise.
Zeke returns, we promise. Thank you so much for joining us here on this week's edition of the Yinziders. Be sure to follow us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast. Give us a rating, give us a review. We really appreciate it.
Only if it's 5 stars and positive. Otherwise, keep your comments to yourself.
Yeah, otherwise just keep those inside thoughts. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next week.